Okay, we are back in this open meeting. Could I have someone please move the consent agenda number 5 as reported, moved by Director French, second by Director Pettengill.
Hold on, I had a question about that.
Go ahead, Vic.
I just wondered why, at least in the agenda that I got, the original one, there was a listing of general select funds. I just wondered why that was in the consent agenda.
I don't see it here. Are you working off an agenda that's 359 pages?
Well, no, actually, because I made my notes on the original one that was sent out, it was 331 pages. And it followed the Patrick Wheeler, it followed the Vancouver Coastal Health. Anyway, we can certainly move it. There wasn't anything wrong with that. I just thought that it was odd that that was there.
I
Okay,
think that might have been corrected in the updated agenda, which is now the
what you're
current
voting on. Okay, in favor, good.
Okay, so with that, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we'll move on to 7.1, the Electoral Area Directors Committee recommendation for June 12th. 7.1.1, there's a deputy CAO verbal update. Is that where we're going? Are we bringing Omar? Hi.
Speak to the bus shelter.
Okay. Come on up. We're talking about the Britannia Oceanfront Comprehensive Development. Specifically, the transit type 4 bus shelter in the 99 right of way. Turn it over to you.
Omar Butt, Director of Environmental Services. And I'm actually gonna ask Kim to speak on this bus stop piece because she has more background than I do.
Sure. Hi, I'm Kim Needham, Director of Planning and Development Services. Are there specific questions about this?
She says, looking at me. I'm just trying to think what my last questions were. Some of my questions have been answered. I was concerned that, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Concerned that McDonald's are winding down this summer and I thought we needed them to build the bus shelter before they go away. But I understand that's not necessarily so. We have the money and we can, okay. So that was one of my questions. And the other one was to do with establishing exactly where that bus stop is going to be. And whether we can, so whether we need to wait until we have a transit system in place or whether we can negotiate with the Modi right now. And the reason I felt that was necessary is that they are planning to close off that exit onto the highway right by the bridge, which we think is the best place to have a bus stop. So if when they close that off, if they recognize that's where the bus stop's going to be, that will affect how they close it off.
Thanks. So through the chair, through the rezoning at Britannia Beach North, we collected around $20,000 for bus shelter. And in speaking with BC Transit, it's really not best practice to build bus shelters in advance of a service because it confuses the public, it attracts vandalism, etc. We also can't build transit shelters that might benefit a private bus operator. That would be giving public funds to support private business. So the suggestion that BC Transit had was that what we can do is apply through the regional manager for MOTI to construct the plinth, the concrete plinth for the shelter and have that put in advance of actually constructing the shelter. So that's something staff can pursue. We don't need a board resolution for that, but we can reach out to the regional manager and see about being able to determine a site in order to construct that.
That would do what I would want done, because if they agree on a site for the shelter, they're necessarily having to agree that, okay, that's where the bus stop's gonna be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great, thank you.
Director Patton, go ahead.
So sorry, am I hearing then though, we had agreements or promises to get a shelter and implies a plinth as well, and now we're sort of, we'll spend our money on a plinth and then hope that BC Transit does the shelter down the road, or what exactly are we?
Yeah, through the money we collected was for a bus shelter. The plinth is something, I'm not sure if that was actually, if they factor that in when they quote. So it may be a little bit extra to do that for. And the shelter we would apply for once we had a regional transit system in place, we can apply to BC Transit for a transit stop number. And then we would go to they have a private company that produces these shelters, and we would just order the one that's suitable.
I'm sorry, and BC Transit would fund the shelter piece, or we would?
Local governments have to pay for their shelters.
So we've pre-collected the funds and we'll hold them until we're. But we don't want to put it up. That makes total sense, not putting it up until. It's very good foresight. To collect it in advance. Anyone else? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, and so are we past the point of sort of saying, well, yeah, our expectation was the shelter and the plinth, like, sure, we need to hold it in cash rather than build it now, but our expectation is that we have the funding at the end of the day to do the plinth, the shelter, like a functional shelter at the end of the day, just so that, you know, we're not sort of burdening the taxpayer with something that we were expecting the developer to.
Try to collect.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to collect it after the fact.
If it takes us 5 years to get a transit system in place, then we probably won't have enough money. But you can't very well go back to a developer now and say, oh, I'm sorry, we haven't got a transit system yet, give us some more money.
Yeah.
We've got the money that would build us a shelter now. And the concrete plinth is part of the shelter. So we do that part and that's in place. And then we'll have some money left over, which will earn a little bit of interest in the years it takes us to get a transit system in place. And then we build it. And if we're a few $1,000s short, then we'll have to look at where we can get that money from. It won't be difficult.
Okay. This was just an update to receive.
Well, there is a request
Is
that
there-
there's a motion that staff bring a staff report to.
Right, the recommendation is that staff bring a report to a future board meeting with an update on the ongoing work related to this.
I'm not sure we need to ask staff to do that. Now, we've had an
Yeah, that's a
update
good thing.
here and
So why
I'm
don't we just receive this as information?
not sure what else staff can add to that in the next month. What do you think?
We're good. Okay, motion to receive, Director Rainbow, second by Director French. Any further comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Work done. Colin's coming in for this. Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Hodgins. Director
Good
LaFrance,
afternoon.
topic or go straight to Colin? We'll go straight to Colin. Go ahead. The floor is yours. We're on 7.1.2. The information report regarding the select funds from June of 24.
Were you looking for the report for the spending on the wildfire, or just a statement on the select fund report?
Just the select funds report. And we're, right. Go ahead.
Maybe I'll just open it up to questions for this one,
Yeah.
if anyone has any.
That's perfect. Director Demare, question.
What I was looking for, Mr. Hodgkins, is for the tilt funds. For the asbestos testing,
Yep,
it's $80,000 allocated altogether. I'd like to know how many properties have been paid out and the value.
How much is left, you mean?
Yep.
there. Of the 80,000, we spent 30,000 in 2023. And so far in 2024, we spent around 14,000.
You have about half left.
44,000. Do you know how many properties?
I don't have that in front of me, but I can email you if that would be helpful.
Okay, so the motion is to direct staff to come back with that report. Would you like to make that motion?
That, I think that was the motion at the EAD meeting. And we got the general select, we got select there, not filled.
Go ahead.
Can I make just a clarification, this motion from the EAD meeting that needs to be officially moved by the board?
Exactly. Right. This was a recommendation for us to make that motion, then have that
Okay.
staff come back with that PILT report on the remaining amount.
And I'll make that motion.
Okay. Do I have a seconder? Director Rainbow, comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, support this, but I guess this sort of gets at something which I still not sure how best to move this forward, but there's a question of what is the community expectation in terms of disaster funding from us? And, how do we expect to manage that? Like, we've sort of got a bit of an ad hoc, best we can. Doesn't seem like a very suitable going forward solution. So how do we have that discussion on either telling the community, like, we just can't be dependent on for this, or yes, we are going to provide a level of funding and this is how we're gonna do it.
Yeah. I think that's a good question as to how we create kind of a sustainable funding mechanism for future disasters and a predictable amount. Is that,
And or if, should we?
and should we? Yeah. But
Hi, thank you through the chair. That is one of the conversations we're having at UBCM that this board did move forward, which was Hello Province, a lot of select funds are being spent specifically for recovery, and should this actually be built in a broader sense from the province's recovery funds when it comes to wildfires? Because was this money always meant to go to recovery for wildfires? Was it meant to go for infrastructure and community then?
or other things, yeah.
And I guess I understand, and that seems like it may take a while to get to a conclusion. I guess I'm just concerned in the next 5 years. We sort of go all we can for Gun Lake, but then there's another area A. Are we comfortable saying, sorry, we're tapped out, or do we want something in the interim? And, got a huge workload, so maybe this is just one of those things that we can't get to, but that's, I guess, where my concern is there.
Yeah. A little bit. But
It's not a concern for me. We have to help these people. That's part of our mandate as electoral area directors, is to see where the funds that we have allocated to us, where they can be best used. Best use of that money was to get all the properties identified that had asbestos, and to try to get it removed as fast as possible. So it did impact the environment, especially the water. So that's fine. Moving forward, we need to advocate to to the ministries, various ministries, that funding for riparian area issues need to be dealt with at a provincial level. So that's where the advocacy comes in, that the board can do.
I don't think I'm disagreeing. I think what I'm saying is, the province is gonna take them 5 to 10 years to figure out what this thing is on their side. And in the interim, we've got 5 or 10 years of possibly multiple fires in area A, in area B. What expectation? Because again, and I'm not sort of saying we shouldn't have done what we did, but it means then we don't have as much for the next 2 fires in area A. I mean, heaven forbid, maybe this doesn't happen, but that is a difficult conversation we're setting ourselves up for of telling the next 2 communities in area A, like, we already spent the money.
I think every situation is gonna be different. And we have to handle every situation differently. It's a very, yeah, you put yourself into the people's shoes there. And it's hard.
Absolutely, and I
Yeah.
don't disagree at all. I guess it's just, we are sort of putting all our eggs into sort of the basket of responding to the thing that's happening right now, all out, and leaving nothing for the next. I'm a little bit uncomfortable. I would like to sort of, and I don't know that select funds or area funds are the right mechanism, but sort of, if we are as a board saying we need to provide some level of funding for emergency disaster relief to fill in for the province, I feel like we should give some level of comfort or expectation or understanding with the community of what we can do for the next 5 years. Because it feels like very like first come, first serve, and the first couple of emergency will be lucky and everyone else will have nothing because we'll have spent it. That's where I get uncomfortable.
Sorry.
Last comment, because I don't wanna
Yeah.
back and forth this
Yeah.
isn't the time for it. So go ahead.
The electoral areas get funding from various sources. And every year it comes in. So the bill funding comes in every year. Hopefully the community growing fund will come in and so that's where some of that funding comes in. There's other funding that has come in also to the fire loss property owners from other means. And I'll share with you at when we do the roundtable.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Viv, and then I'm gonna go to Armand, and then I'm gonna go to Tony, and then we're gonna have lunch. Viv, go
Thanks.
ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And if I'm following this, Sal was just trying to establish how much of his payment in lieu of taxes money of the 80,000 he set aside, how much of that had been spent so far. I think he's just trying to plan to know how much more he needs perhaps to set aside for that particular job that he's trying to help the property owners accomplish. And because unless you do this, you can't do that. There's so much of that going on in this cleanup, and that's been really awful for everyone. And I really think it's amazing what Sal is doing in area A as far as he can. And there are some sources of help coming from other places. But Chris is asking the bigger question is where's our general pot of money to help the different areas for this? We're lucky that we have some funds sitting available for this round, but yeah, we probably need to plan a little better for some disaster response funding in future. And if I'm hearing you, you're saying we're already talking about that at UBCM as an issue. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got a meeting set with the ministry to ask these questions.
Good.
And I think to your question, should a general pot of money be collected to help communities out of disaster funding, or is this something that should be coming from the province
Right.
through disaster financial assistance, which is an established funding mechanism for communities? And so are we downloading from? So let's have that conversation at a strategic planning and budget conversation rather than now. Armand, and then Tony, and then lunch. Go ahead.
I'm good.
Okay.
The conversation has addressed my,
Thank you, Tony.
I think that there's no question that we had to deal with the situation at Downton. And if something happens this summer, we have to deal with it. We have to find a way to deal with it. I don't think we can say, oh, I'm sorry, we spent the money on area A last year, we don't have the money, we don't have money for you. So we have, as a regional district, we have to deal with it. And we may get to the point at we may at some point where we say to the municipalities, we need some help from you to support what's happened in one of the electoral areas. Ideally, we want the province to take care of it. That's what we should be advocating for. But absent that support from the province, we may have to look within our regional district to find support. And I don't think we should ever be saying to people, oh, I'm sorry, it was first come first. We haven't got the money left. And we find a way to do it.
With that, we have a motion on the floor. I will call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. I will call a recess of this meeting and we will return here shortly before one. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. Just my Zoom is not on, and that's fine. Welcome back, everyone. We will call this meeting back to order, and we are at 4.1 on our agenda. This is a delegation with BC Builds, and we are pleased to have Lisa Helps here with us to tell us all about it. Good afternoon, Lisa.
Is that any better? Yay, poof. I think
Awesome.
my sound setting is one thing for Teams and one thing for Zoom. So here I am. Sorry to be tardy.
No problem. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to hear what you have to say, and we'll turn the floor over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I just want to begin with acknowledging where I am today, which is the homelands of the Lekwungen speaking people, the Songhees and the Esquimalt nations. Those of you who may have been to the LGLMA or other events will have seen an overview of this presentation, but for your colleagues who haven't, that's why I'm here today. I'll whip through this and then happy to answer your questions. If we can go to the next slide and then the next slide. So BC Builds is a new program meant to help accelerate the home building sector, particularly focused on multi-unit residential and particularly focused on middle-income households at a time when construction costs are high, interest rates are high, labor shortage is real, and so on and so forth. So BC Builds is really meant to intervene in this space at this time with a particular focus on middle-income households. And I'll define who we mean by that in just a moment. If we can go to the next slide. So BC Builds has 3 areas of focus, and I'll start with those, and then 3 target audiences, and I'll talk about those next. So our first mandate when it comes to the public stream side, which is what I'm here to talk about today, is to identify low-cost land for development. And when we think about land, we don't just think about bare patches of earth that could be used for housing, but with partners like municipalities, First Nations, nonprofits, a whole range of entities, what land might be available to build something on that housing could go on top of. So is it a fire hall or a city hall or a childcare, et cetera, et cetera? What can we build housing on top of? So that's really the first mandate, is identify low-cost land that's not currently being used for housing. The second thing we do then is bring together landowners with developers and work with local governments to accelerate the project through the development process. And I'll tell you a bit more about how in a moment. And then importantly, because of the cost environment we're in when it comes to housing, BC Builds can bring both grants and low-cost financing to nonprofit, First Nation, and co-op and public housing corporation projects. Next slide. So we have, next slide after that, we have three areas of focus. The first is on renters. We will be in the future hopefully developing a Pathways to Homeownership program, but for now we're starting with renters. Our aim is to have thousands of homes under construction over the next few years. And again, as I said at the outset, BC Builds picks up where the rest of BC Housing's programs leave off. So well, there's the Community Housing Fund, the Indigenous Housing Fund, the Supportive Housing Fund, all available through BC Housing for low and moderate income households. BC Builds really is targeted at middle income households. So it's the people in our communities who keep our communities running, like our teachers, our nurses, our transit operators, small business owners, and even with a half decent salary, can't find anywhere to rent in the communities where they're working. I just really want to stress, when you see the middle income limits there on the screen, that is not the target household that we are aiming for. Those are the maximums. So that's a qualifying maximum. But the approach with BC Builds is with low cost land, with grants, with accelerated timelines and so on. We can hit household incomes that are middle income, but that are substantially below that maximum. Next slide. So in addition to renters and working for them, we're working for and with government, nonprofit, and community landowners. And when we set up BC Builds, we did a lot of consultation with municipalities across the province. We consulted with UBCM and really heard that, yes, municipalities are interested in helping with the housing situation. Some may have land or be building other infrastructure that housing can go on top of, but don't have capacity for housing. That's not the role of staff. It's not within budget and so on. So we really built BC Builds to be tailored towards those needs. So we work with municipalities and other community government and nonprofit landowners to help develop a vision for what could go on the site, set project goals and timelines, look for creative opportunities to add housing on top of other infrastructure, as I've said. And then importantly, help to secure a developer, builder, and owner operator of the building, again, recognizing that with some exceptions, and I know Whistler has its own housing authority, that municipalities aren't in the business of owning and operating housing. And that's just a list there of some of who we work with. And the next slide is kind of the flip side of the last slide. We don't build housing ourselves, but we partner with and help landowners partner with First Nations Development Corps, nonprofits, and private residential developers, help connect those developers to land, accelerate approvals to get buildings built sooner, and then work collaboratively to remove obstacles as the process unfolds. So let's go to the next slide, and that's just going to say initial BC Builds project. So let's carry on. There's 3 projects here. I'm not going to go over these in detail because I really want to save time for your questions. But these are just meant to illustrate some of the possibilities. And you do have this slide deck, so you can review the details afterwards. This is a partnership with the City of North Vancouver. They are building a 3-story Catalyst will build it for them, 3-story neighborhood house. So a provision of seniors programs, food bank, childcare, youth programs, et cetera. They were going to rebuild it anyway, but not until 2027, 2028. But they thought, we've got this project, it's only going to get more expensive. BC Builds is here, so why don't we do this now and add housing on top? Next slide is a partnership with the Cowichan Nation. Same thing, on the bottom floor are Indigenous businesses that will rent the spaces at below market lease rates, and the tribal headquarters for the Cowichan tribes, and close to 200 homes across 2 buildings. And this is a really neat project because it is owned by the nation. It is in downtown Duncan, but on reserve, and it will provide housing not only for nation members, but also for workers who work at the soon to be built nearby Cowichan Hospital. So again, target is workforce housing, but lots of room for First Nations participation. Next slide is just example of a small project. This is land owned by the town of Gibsons, childcare on the bottom and housing on top. So as you can see with these demo projects, we're really trying to maximize the use of public land. We can do projects that are just housing, and certainly we are doing those, but looking for opportunities to partner with other infrastructure. what we like to think of as the BC Builds difference. We have a mandate to deliver homes quickly. And that means closing the pre-development gap from 3 to 5 years, which is the typical time it takes from projects to go to from concept to construction, to getting projects from, hey, we've got land and we have an idea, to, hey, look, we're building housing on this land in 12 to 18 months. And the methodology is at the bottom there. Rather than working in a linear way, which is the typical development process, we bring everyone together and put everything into the hopper or the fuel for the rocket ship. I like to think of this as the BC Builds rocket ship. Anyways, land goes in, feasibility starts, partnerships are built. We're starting with the approvals, we're starting with the financing, all at the beginning of the process. We put together a project team for each project, and then we're getting projects to construction in 12 to 18 months. That's our mandate. We just started in February. We were working with some projects before that, so we're on track so far with our initial projects to hit that 12 to 18 months timeline. And then let's just go to the next few slides. I want to show you the housing development opportunities page. So this is, I think, a real opportunity for local governments and other nonprofits or government entities or First Nations that have land, that want to use it for housing, that either the land is zoned or you can do a city or district or municipality initiated rezoning. And then let's go to the next slide. We put the site up for you on the housing development opportunities page, and you can just, this is a bit dated actually. We've had 3 come off and 1 more go up. The land goes up here. The municipality tells the development community everything about the land that they need to put forward good proposals. For landowners, some might be looking for just a developer builder and they already have a nonprofit partner or a housing corporation. That's fine, we can do it that way. And some landowners just have land and they're looking for a developer builder and a nonprofit owner operator. Really important to stress that we're not asking anyone to give away their land. We do recommend a 99-year lease or 60 to 99-year lease to a nonprofit or private entity if you wish. And then that allows the public land to stay public, but being maximized for housing use. Next few slides just take us deeper into the housing development opportunities page. So that's what it looks like. Each site has its own little square, has its own property opportunity notice, which I talked about, where the municipality basically does their pitch. We have a template to make it very easy. We host an info session with the municipality and the development community who may be interested in bringing forward proposals. We then record the info session and post it there so that anyone who missed it can still watch it and have an opportunity to submit their proposals. And then the next slide, again, it's just a bit of a deeper dive into it's the front cover of a property opportunity notice. And that's the opportunity to really tell a story about your land, about your project, about your site, about your municipality, and give the development community something to respond to. And then the next slide, which I'm not going to go into too much detail on, this is also on our website, but this just walks through the process from, hey, we have land and it's zoned, to now our project is under construction. And there's a couple of out clauses there for all parties in case things don't go as planned. So that's the housing development opportunities pathway. That's one pathway if you have zoned land or you know a church or a community group or anyone else that has zoned land and they don't have a partner. This is a pathway to finding that partner. We're also working with others who have zoned land, who already have a nonprofit partner, who may even have a developer on board. And then we just come in more with the project steering committee and the funding and financing. So those are the 2 different pathways through a BC Builds project for public entities. So I am going to wrap up there and really happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much for that. It's even better the second time. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Director Pettengill.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Is there anything special a regional district needs to be aware of or think of in this program?
No, we're also working directly with regional districts. I think everything is, I mean, a local government is a local government from the perspective of BC Builds. The key, if you're interested in using the Housing Development Opportunities page, is that the land is zoned for what you'd like to see there. And the reason that we ask for that is part of the whole BC Build's ethos is to try and de-risk through partnership. So if the municipality has land and zones it for what it wants, that takes some risk away from the developer who's then going to come and put their time and money into a development permit and building permit. So, yeah, that's nothing exceptional for regional districts, but I guess just for everyone, the land needs to be zoned, and we're happy to work directly with regional districts as well.
Okay, well, I don't see any other questions. Thank you for your time today and for all of the work that you've put into this project. It's exciting to see all of these new buildings coming and money being spent in all areas of the province. So with that, I think we'll say thank you and we'll see you next time.
Okay, thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Sure. Oh, yeah. Well, we can pick off some of these area director recommendations. Okay, we're at 7.1.3, which is a recommendation from the Committee of Area Directors regarding public hearing waiver for Area C in Wedgwood Estates. Could I have some, or does anybody have any questions? We do have staff on hand if anyone has any questions. This has been wrestled by the Area Directors Committee, so anyone no questions? Did you want to move it?
Yeah, I'll move option 1.
Okay, seconded by Director Rainbow. Comments? Are okay, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. We don't have Jack done, right? Okay, and 7.1.4, a direction request regarding the TUP for Area C, number 75, and and this is a motion to reject the issuance of the temporary use permit. Would someone like to move that?
I'll move that, please.
Second by Director Demare. Comments? Okay, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. 7.1.5, this is a picnic bench to be replaced up on the High Line. Would someone like to move that? Moved by Director Birch Jones, seconded by Director Demare.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
the chair.
Yeah.
That was through the chair. That was moved through the EAD as it was an allocation of select funds, so it doesn't have to move through the board. However, the resolution in front of the board is regarding changes to the procedures bylaw when we start doing that review.
Yep. So the motion is
that is part of the Policy Development and Review Committee's work related to reviewing procedure bylaw number 1499, 2016, that considerations be made to streamlining process to the greatest extent possible, including section 4.5, which is consideration of agenda business in absence of a director.
great. That is the motion. Thank you. Moved by Director Mayor, seconded by Director Mack. Comments or questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And receiving this letter from the Owl Bus Concerns, which was forwarded to the area directors and discussed, moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director French. Comment?
Yeah. I just wanted to comment, I think maybe we wanted to do more than just receive it. because it's a very good letter, and of course, it's going to all the right people. But we also discussed the fact that it doesn't address the very important consideration of Highway 99 being an evacuation route in the event of emergencies, both going from south to north and the other way around. And so I thought we might send on the letter to the Minister of Transportation, supporting the letter, and also to the Ministry of Emergency Management, BC, supporting the letter and suggesting that they also remember that it's an evacuation route, potentially a very important lifeline for the province, as it has been in the past. So I'd like the board to consider that.
Okay, so I think first order of business would be to receive the letter as the board, which we have a motion on the floor, so I'll call the question on that. All in favor of receiving the letter, which is the only purpose of this moment in time.
Good.
All in favor, any opposed, motion carries. Now, if you would like to make a motion that we
Sure.
forward this to the concerned ministries, with our support.
A
of the
motion,
letter in consideration of evacuation routes as they do future planning. Is that your intention?
thank you.
Okay. We can do that.
And I also, because I'll be meeting with the Minister of Transportation for Lillooet, in regards to, the Bud car. And could I also take this letter as part of my package?
Public record, so you're welcome to, and you don't need a motion for that.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
So. Are you happy with that?
Through the chair, for clarity, the letter was sent to Honorable David Eby, as well as Honorable Rob Fleming. But yes, we can
Okay,
also
perhaps-
draft a letter if that's the wish of the board.
Yeah, so perhaps the motion is, because they've already received it, that we direct staff to write a letter of support and copy this letter to Honorable Bowen Ma, Minister of Emergency Services and Climate Readiness, requesting that this be considered in future planning. Evacuation purposes. Does that suit Director Birch Jones, your intention?
Thank you, yes.
A comment that I made at EAD that I'd like to make here as well, that, we have a transit committee. I think it might be called the Sea to Sky Transit Committee, I'm not really sure. But I think that when that committee should sort of take into consideration transit in the Lillooet AB area. I think we tend to sort of forget it, and we shouldn't.
Okay. Can that just be a friendly side note to? Okay. Okay. So the motion on the floor, everyone understands it? You're seconding it? Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Pardon me? Yeah. Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
That's okay. Sea to Sky Transit was set up. Sea to Sky Transit Committee was set up to provide transit specifically to Sea to Sky corridor. If things like these are, which they are, priorities, then I think it should be, I don't think the place for it is that committee. We should figure out another body or another group or another venue so that those concerns and needs get dealt with. I don't think that's the right place for them. So it's.
I'll take that away with Director Birch Jones and we can figure out where the best place for that conversation to land. With that, it's 1:30. We have a second delegation at 30. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you, Chad. Turning it over. Thanks, Chad. 9.2, go ahead.
So our suggestion, Chair, is that we just do brief introductions to the folks in the room first, and then pass it over to Mike Strain, who's joining us virtually for the presentation. Is that okay with yourself?
That's great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So starting with myself, Philippa Campbell, Project and Program Coordinator for the SLRD.
Ali Chappell, SLRD Project Manager.
We also have sitting in the gallery, we have Kristen Clark, Director of Strategic Services, and we have Gary Young, President of Lillooet Lake Estates, joining us today as well for the board's awareness from the gallery. Thank you, Chair. Are you happy for it to go to Mike now?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks, Philippa. I'm Mike Strain with CapEx Projects. I'm working closely with Philippa and Ali on this project. I'm here to give you a presentation on the Catalina Creek Debris Flow Mitigation Services Project. This is the 4th project status update. Next slide, please. So here's the presentation agenda. So we'll go through a high-level overview touching briefly on project governance, location of the project, and the project objective. And then we'll go into more detail and provide updates on the project scope, budget, costs, and funding, the service and loan, project schedule, project risks, and next steps. You will have seen some of these slides before, so I'll move through them rather quickly. But before we get started, just for a high-level context, I wanted to state that just to situate you where we're at with the project, we're currently in the permitting and design phase between the 90 and 100% design completion. So we're approaching 100% design and tender. This slide that you're looking at here is just a quick reminder with regards to the project governance and organization. We continue to work with the steering committee and collaborate with LLE and the consultants on items related to the project. Next slide, please. You've seen this slide before. The project scope is to design, or sorry, this is wrong slide. Project's located on the north side of Lillooet Lake in the traditional territory of Lillooet Nation, with the creek passing through Crown Land, Lillooet Lake Estates, or LLE. We're working with Lillooet as right holders of the land. Next slide, please. Project scope is to design, construct, and establish operation and maintenance of a debris flow mitigation structure for the Catalina Creek at Lillooet Lake Estates. The objective is to reduce the risk to the community and potential for loss of life by increasing capacity of the existing channel to manage future debris flows of up to 100,000 cubic meters through the community under a new Forest Service Road bridge and into Lillooet Lake. The 100,000 cubic meters represents a debris flow event with a 1,000-year return period. Next slide. Okay, so shown here is our high-level overview of the preliminary and 90% design. Sorry, this is the 90% design, which is showing some of the changes since the last design. Please note the locations and dimensions are not exact. So the main channel has now been redesigned with steeper side slopes to reduce the volume of excavation required. And some of the existing berms have been increased in size to accommodate more fill volume on site and reduce costs associated with hauling fill off-site. Additional berms were also added near the FSR. The design meets the individual and group risk reduction objectives and is not expected to result in increased maintenance costs. Without these changes, the project was not affordable given the current available funds. Moving forward to 100% design, we expect there will be limited changes to the footprint, and the engineer will work to finalize the details, specifications, and operations and maintenance plan. Next slide, please. So the current approved budget is 8.1 million, and the current cost estimate is 11.5 million. The current budget is based on the 2022 update of the LLE commissioned 2016 preliminary design cost estimate, which was used to apply for grant funding and the LLE loan authorization bylaw. The 90% design estimate is 11.5 million and is $1.4 million lower than the 50% design estimate. This decrease in cost was anticipated due to the reduction in excavation quantities. However, the reduction was offset by other items, which include increased estimates for traffic control, environmental restoration, and production rates for hauling, placing, and compaction. And other items like water main replacement, maintenance of haul roads, and installation of temporary bridges along the Forest Service Road. As part of the constructability review, which was recently completed, a second cost estimate was completed by a heavy civil contractor, Knappett Industries. Knappett's estimate confirmed that the engineer's construction cost estimate was generally in the right ballpark. Some of the key differences were to do with clearing and grubbing, trucking and disposal, rock breaking, and other general condition items such as construction facilities, quality control, insurance, and bonding. But overall, it was generally within the right ballpark. Through the constructability review, it was also identified that if track packing of the berms were permitted instead of the prescribed roller compaction, there could be a significant cost savings. So this is an area that the engineers are currently investigating. The other potential significant savings would be if a disposal site closer to the site was identified. If a disposal site of sufficient capacity is available near the site, it would eliminate the need for temporary bridges and longer haul roads. We are continuing to work on these options, working with LLE to identify sites within the community and working with Lillooet Nation Land and Resource Department to conduct a preliminary archaeological assessment and review of a potential fill site near Strawberry Point. There's also some areas of remaining cost uncertainty, including costs associated with the spotted owl habitat compensation, fish compensation, costs associated with finalizing the SRW, that's the stat right of way, and potential costs associated with archaeological requirements. Next slide, please. Now that the ICIP funding has been approved and CEPF and the LLE loan authorization are in place, the current available funds are up to 11.7 million. As it stands, the current cost estimate is within the available funding. And again, recognizing the importance of keeping the community loan as low as possible, opportunity to reduce costs as discussed on the last slide, but are also looking at potential ways to increase funding. Unfortunately, the project application for a grant through the Disaster Mitigation Adaptation Fund was not successful. We have also been discussing applying for a future intake of CEPF. However, in discussion with the grant administration, the competition for this grant has really increased and they expect it will remain quite competitive moving forward. And the likelihood of receiving additional funding through this program is uncertain. We are continuing to maintain awareness of the funding environment. Next slide, please. So this is a brief update on Cost Center 2406, a service established for the design, construction, and maintenance of the debris flow works. In 2023, approved requisition was $200,000. This was drafted prior to the project initiation and involved some estimates. 2024, the requisition was set at $32,000. This was based on project schedule and cash flow at the time of drafting in March, and includes approximately $80,000 carried forward from 2023. The 2025 requisition is listed in the 2024 to 2028 financial plan at $239,000. This number was assuming that loan funds would need to be borrowed in support of the project in 2024, and it is now known that loan funds will not be required until 2025. This amount is subject to change depending on the 2025-2029 financial plan process. Next slide, please. So the loan is associated with the same service. This is the $4 million loan the community petitioned for in 2022. To date, no loan funds have been drawn. It is clear from the cost estimate coming forward through detailed design that the loan funds from the community continues to be an important source of funding for the completion of the project. And we know that means a financial impact to the residents, which we are working to minimize as best we can through the process. The amount required from the loan is to be determined. When drafting the 2024 financial plan in March, staff estimated needing to borrow funds in the range of 0 to 2.7 million for the first draw. The amount and timing of drawing funds remains to be determined and is dependent on factors including results of detailed design, updated cost estimates, and project schedule. At this time, staff intends to bring a decision regarding borrowing and adoption of security issuing bylaw, if required, to the SLRD board in the fall. If the decision is made in the fall to draw loan funds and the SI bylaw is adopted, the funds would not actually be received by the SLRD until the spring of 2025. Repayment costs associated with borrowed funds would not start to be payable by the cost center until later in 2025, and the 2025 tax requisition would be developed to reflect this timing. Next slide. Okay. On this slide, referenced in the gray. Yep. Sorry, was there a question? Okay. On this slide, referenced in the gray area is the time span between the last update to the board at the end of March. Since the last update, we've received the 90% design and cost estimate, completed the timber cruise, constructability review, and have made application for DFO authorization, DMA, and water license applications. We've since been notified by DFO that further information is needed, such as the fish salvage and letter of credit. So this is in process. Additional efforts to address permitting requirements have extended the design time further, and the preliminary archaeological assessment and stat right-of-way are in progress, with completion anticipated in the coming weeks. So we have adjusted our target tender period by approximately a month, reducing the construction period by approximately a month. This duration for construction is still approximately a year and still believed to be achievable. However, further delays could push the construction completion into 2026. There is further risk that the start of construction is delayed pending receipt of permits, completion of archaeological investigations, and finalizing the stat right-of-way. We are currently working on developing the construction procurement documents. Next slide, please. Here we see the updated top 5 risks for the project. Risk item 1 is delays in obtaining permitting and approvals. We've taken steps to mitigate risks of delays in obtaining permits and approvals by submitting applications as early as possible and continue to work with the approving authorities to ensure permits and approvals will be complete prior to construction. We've also been working with First Nations who are part of the provincial, federal permitting approvals to understand and meet their requirements. Risk number 2 is securing required land interests. The project will require the stat right-of-way be finalized prior to tender. Until this is in place, it has the potential to delay the schedule. Risk number 3 is upward pressure on costs. Although we have taken some measures to reduce these impacts, there are a few items that we are continuing to monitor and manage related to land, habitat compensation, completion of design and assessments, and construction. As previously mentioned, we are also working to identify cost savings measures to mitigate areas where cost pressures may be unavoidable. Risk item 4 is schedule delays. So while the construction completion date hasn't changed, the risk of schedule delay remains. Our biggest outstanding risk here is related to securing land interests and obtaining permits and approvals in a timely manner. Risk item number 5 is related to construction safety. Risks inherent with working on steep slopes with heavy equipment within a populated community and along a busy Forest Service road. Aside from workplace health and safety legislation and other requirements of the ministry, we will look to place requirements on the contractor through the construction contract, and will ensure communication plans and protocols are in place and effective. Next slide, please. So our next steps include fish salvage and spotted owl application, which also includes an owl callback survey, 100% design and cost estimate, receive results of the preliminary archaeology assessment, and determine next steps. Finalize the stat right of way with LLE. And once the stat right of way is sorted out and design is complete and within budget, we'll be looking to the SLRD board for approval to issue a call for tenders. Assuming the above steps are completed, we anticipate construction would commence in the fall and be complete by the end of 2025. Next slide, please. In the coming months, we anticipate the board will consider staff recommendations on the following matters. Approval to extend the engineering prime consultants agreement into construction. Approval of a revised budget following design and cost estimate updates. Approval to authorize issuing a call for tenders to initiate the construction services procurement process. Approval for award of construction services and for decisions related to borrowing. Next slide, please. So that's the end of my presentation. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you very much. Are there questions?
Comprehensive.
There is a lot to this project. But
That's a very good report. I'm just wondering if it's been considered, when we get to the actual construction phase, if we're still looking for more money or if we've got enough money to complete it, is this construction going to start from the lake and work our way up the hill? Because I would think that would be the wise thing to do. Just you go up the hill as far as the money will take it. And then if we need to look for more money, we look for more money. But we can't wait to look for more money and delay construction. There's a lot of money available right at the moment. So we need to get going on that. Thanks.
Yeah, I would just comment that the engineer has recommended that approach of proceeding from the lake up. As you mentioned there, as it is, I guess the right thing to do in terms of risk management, right? You complete the downstream end first to be able to accommodate any potential slides, I believe is the approach there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
any questions? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Proceed.
Yep,
You proceed.
receipt.
I'll
Seconded by Director French.
speak to it.
Comments? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for all the work on this. That was a very comprehensive presentation that addressed the majority of the outstanding pieces. I think, and I really appreciate the cost, the pieces around what's being investigated to control the cost and to sort of push back on that cost escalation and very practical and I'm curious to see where that takes us, because obviously safety is paramount, but then we have to figure out how to pay for the safety. So I think it's doing a good job of advancing sort of both of those initiatives. So thank you for the work on this and happy to support.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, I will call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both.
Thank you.
On 8.1. Adoption of bylaws for Heritage Conservation Service Establishment in Area B, C, and A, B, and B. No, an amendment in A.
Right on.
A new in B and new in C. Questions? You'll move it? Seconder? Sorry, I didn't see any questions. I'll give you one more chance. Do you want to ask a question? Nope, so you're gonna second Mike's motion to adopt? And can we do all three together? I'm calling the question, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Two.
SMA. We're on SMA. And this is adopting the bylaws to comply with our June 30th deadline. Nicely done. Moved by Director Burford.
Together, if that's also appropriate.
Number 4, seconded by Director French. Comments? Okay, all in favor? Actually, I will make a comment. This wasn't easy. We know it, but I would like to publicly acknowledge that this was not easy. And thank you for both, for all of the work that went into this. And let's see it happen. Thank you. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Just like that, 8.3, Boulder Creek Operations Resident Zoning Amendment, second and third reading. Are there any questions? Does anyone have any questions? I don't see any questions. Director Mack would like to move it,
Yes, I would.
and Director DeMare would like to second it. Any comments? No? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving fast. 8.4, SLRD ticketing system bylaw notice enforcement bylaw 1447. And, pardon me? Yes. So we're gonna do 1869. Be read a first, second, and third time. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Finch. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And that the same bylaw is adopted, moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Richmond. Comment? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Good.
Good. Blackcomb Snowmobiles in Electoral Area D Amendment Bylaw 1827. That this be read a second time and that we have Anna to answer questions. Yeah, those two. Okay. You have questions? Yeah, great. We have Anna Katerniak here to answer questions for you. Go ahead, Director Rainbow.
One that I thought I'd asked before, but part of this application references the fact that they wanted to use some land prior to the Olympics was denied, because of the Olympic national, the park, Whistler Olympic Park. So I'm wondering what has changed between that time when they were denied that application and now, because my understanding of the Olympic Park is that it really hasn't changed in function at the time of the Olympics. It's just recently had a major international competition there, and so my question was, by granting this application, would that impact in any way the activities of the Olympic Park? And I'd like to know the answer to that before we go any further on this.
Okay.
That was one question. I have a couple of other questions.
You want to let her answer the first one?
Yeah, okay. That's a good idea.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I did email them with that question, and whether any of their activities would impact activities at the Whistler Olympic Park. And they said that there is no overlap there. But if you'd like, I can confirm again and include that in the third reading report, just so that it's in writing.
Okay. I'm okay with that, yeah. Another question was, I guess the first time this came up, I didn't see that the fact that they were going to have dog sled things in there. And I just wondered, is there any connection at all between the company that runs the dog sledding and there's no connection with the one, you know which one I'm talking about, okay. And then sort of along with that, what guarantees are there in place to ensure the dog's welfare? I think they're there during the winter pulling sleds. What happens to them the rest of the year? Is there adequate accommodation there? Are they cared for the whole year? You know, just I'd like some sort of guarantee on that.
For the chair, unfortunately, I don't know any details about the dog welfare, but I can certainly include that in my email to them and sort of get more information on that for the next reading.
I noticed in the responses from the Lillooet Nation, they were asking for additional information. And I'm not comfortable moving forward until that additional information has been provided, until we know that they're comfortable with it. So where are we at on that?
Yeah, through the chair, they have not provided additional information yet. But yeah, that will be included in the next report, whether or not this moves to a third reading. If we have to do a second reading, that can be included in that report.
You want to speak to it?
I just want to speak to the letter from the Lillooet Nation. We are expecting an updated letter with more detailed questions from Lillooet Nation. It has not yet been received to date, but we have been advised that an updated letter is coming. I think perhaps Director Needham could answer whether that should delay this motion. As I understand it, there's more work that can be done. This is not the first kick at the can, and this could let her explain, could this progress while still awaiting those questions?
Hello, Kim Needham, Director of Planning and Development Services. Yes, that information can be a requirement of third reading.
Okay, so do I need to make a motion to that effect?
One could.
Well,
we can make sure at a staff level that is covered off as a condition of third reading. We wouldn't bring it for third reading.
I'm just thinking, if I'm a member of the Lillooet Nation and I sent these things in and I say we've just moved ahead, I just want to make it clear that they will be considered.
Yes, through the chair, the group that manages this, that part of their work would be to make sure that it doesn't progress forward without that. It's part, I don't know if it's necessary, it needs to be a motion because it is part of their.
Okay, that's fine, And the same question with regard to the ROW comments. There's some concern about caretaker accommodation and making sure that will be in perpetuity and that it couldn't be changed in a couple of years. That's what I'm assuming they mean by that anyway, that so you build caretaker accommodation and then 2 years down the road, we're offering it as an Airbnb. You know? So we need something in there to prevent that. There's some comments about fire smarting, so what sort of controls would we put in place to make sure that the whatever activities are undertaken, they pay full attention to fire smarting. And they were talking about watersheds and summer recreation activities and limiting or not extending the use of motorized vehicles. So I want all those things to be really settled before we win any. But if that can be done between second and third, then I guess I'm okay. One last one. Why a virtual public hearing? I remember last time, this is several years ago now, probably 6 years ago, when Mr. Letcombe came forward with a proposal to change their activities in the valley. At a public hearing in the library at Whistler, which was really well attended, and there was a lot of people had a lot to say about it, both for and against, and I thought that was really useful. And I'm not sure you get the same kind of opportunity or the same kind of impact with a virtual one. I'd prefer to see an in-person public hearing.
In this case, it makes sense to you that you would have this in person. Where would you have it, in Whistler?
Yeah, I think that makes sense because most of the people that have concerns, it wouldn't be people living in Area D. You know, it would be people that sort of live in Whistler, so make it convenient for them. And I wouldn't want to have it in Ferry Creek.
No.
We can certainly have an in-person public hearing. You know, we do have staff that live out of the region, and so that becomes a challenge, but we can certainly make it happen. It also, virtual public hearings become a little challenging just in terms of our staffing, because we need support staff as well to be there, but we can certainly make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, there's a potential for concern about this whole thing, and I wouldn't want to get through to the end of it and then have people coming to us and saying we didn't get a chance. So.
I just want to, on the flip side of that, how accessible electronic hearings can be for people who can't make it, who live in rural areas, who have comment. It is great. Both are great, and it's good to consider also that at times these virtual meetings create more of an accessibility for people since we're in a large geographical region.
We've also heard that in terms of people who have childcare demands, it's pretty easy to turn on a public hearing and be there for an hour rather than having to find babysitting. And for people who don't have cars or access to transportation, they have told us that it's nice to have the ability to have a virtual public hearing.
People still have the opportunity to send in their comments, questions and so on by email or by an actual letter. So we're not sort of excluding people from having input. And as I say, I much prefer the opportunities to meet people face to face, having them in the same room.
Director Patton.
Yeah, a couple things. One, just to make sure I'm correct, we aren't at the place where we can do hybrid. It's either in person or virtual exclusively. It's not a hybrid. Is that correct?
Yes.
Currently our preference.
Okay. The other thing, and I think I'd asked the last time about Squamish Nation input. We see again the 2017 letter. Have we asked either the proponent or asked Squamish Nation for an updated perspective from Squamish Nation?
I'll leave that to Ms. Kotanian.
Through the chair, we did send them a referral, but we did not receive a response from them.
Okay, and in terms of what's being requested, I guess I have some concerns about increasing helicopter use, and the justification is that climate change makes it harder to, have all season, but helicopters are pretty good drivers of climate change, so I guess have a bit of a struggle with that. Is there are we permitted to put restrictions on, under what conditions helicopters might be used in their operation, or does that go beyond the sort of thing we could do in a GP?
Yeah, through the chair, aviation is a federally regulated land use. And so we can regulate it to the degree that it relates to things like noise bylaws. But we can't really get into regulating aviation.
But so would that leave us though with the option of sort of, because that's one of the things they've, permitted use. There's some degree of helicopter land, like is that a piece we could exclude from a permit, is the helicopter piece? But, you know, if we can't sort of say, well, these, yes, helicopters with all these conditions, we can't do that, we just sort of leave the helicopter piece out of a permit.
We could, we maybe test it in the courts, that's one risk, for regulating aviation. When it's not something that we're allowed to regulate.
Okay, Director Herford, then Director Birch Jones.
I had the hybrid question, so thank you for covering that off. And I wondered about the helicopters as far as, is this part of emergency response? Like that's the need for it? I'm trying to understand kind of the same piece, like where. Yeah, just where that sits for us. So I think if it's part of the emergency response and their ability to, you know, like, to have that access in that area, that might be. I'd just like to know more about the helicopter piece, I think is maybe the question.
Chair, so they've stated that it's a combination of both. In part, it would be used for emergency purposes, rescue purposes, as well as just commercial purposes as well.
Director Birch Jones, do you have a question?
Thank you. Just hearing the concern about the helicopter and the carbon footprint, and this is the same company that's also using Hummers. So I'm not seeing a lot of nods towards concern about the climate situation. And then that's a concern of mine. Also on the dog sled comment, there's not much information about it. I'm assuming Ms. Koterniak, is this is an operation that's already ongoing and they're expanding it. They already have dog sleds, right?
I believe the dog sleds is one of the new uses that they're implementing.
It's a new one. Okay, so there probably does need to be some sort of quality control there. And they mention a professional musher, but I don't see that listed in their jobs or in the number of staff. You know, they talk about the employment opportunities and people that they're going to be giving jobs to, and that isn't mentioned at all. So maybe a bit more information on that. Thank you.
Through the chair, I was just gonna add that this is an existing business and they have been in operation for probably close to 2 decades, I'm guessing, but I don't recall a time when I don't remember that business operating in the Callahan Valley. So they have been operating a number of these uses, and I believe the dog sleds are there. I haven't been to that particular site before, but I'm pretty certain that they have been running their own operations for some time.
E-Hummers.
E-Hummers?
Yeah, they're.
Hummer EV.
Yeah, those weird cyber trucks. Okay, so, go ahead.
So just on the Squamish Nation referral question. And you know, understanding the load that many nations have, do we typically wait for a response, or we sort of put in and we hear back, great, if not, we just forge ahead? Like, where are we at in terms of things like this, or is that our decision, case by case?
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, we have our referral process, and you know, just in the interest of time, really, we usually give our referees like at least 30 days as a minimum to respond. And we don't, you know, in some cases, we will follow up and say, hey, you know, we haven't heard from you. But generally speaking, we wait for a response, and if we haven't heard from them within that 30-day period, we proceed. We consider their interests unaffected if they haven't responded. Now, many times, especially in the First Nations, they will respond to us and say, hey, we've got your referral, but we've had, you know, things going on, and we have to get to our decision or our committee meeting where the decision will be made. And so can we have an extension? That often happens with the Lillooet. But yeah, that's kind of how it works with our referrals.
Through the chair, just to expand on that, it is noted by staff that the letters of support provided in the application from Squamish Nation would be considered quite outdated, and Chief Harry, one of the letters of support has since passed away. So that is noted. It's a good time to talk about it on July 18th when we all meet again.
Yeah.
It's a really good time.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, with the comments noted, would you like to move it to the rainbow?
What did we decide about the public hearing?
Well, I think that
That's part of the.
great.
Well, I could just expand that we have discussed with legislative services to price out the cost of hybrid. Hybrid costs, because this looks easy, but bringing this to different public locations and the cost, for example, when we do our remote meetings, has a higher cost to it. So it's in the plans to cost it out, just to consider it for future budgets. I will say we see that pressure and we're trying to figure out the cost for that.
Go ahead.
I just, to that point, we do hybrid with the District of Squamish meetings, but it's only possible at certain venues because of the draw of doing that. So I'm aligned with that. That is something that needs to be investigated. It is quite complex to actually get that, do both at the same forms at the same times.
I just want to add to the whole conversation about electronic versus in person is that the world has clearly changed since the pandemic. It's changed everything. And I think the public's expectations are a little different too, as around electronic public hearings. And what we have found since the pandemic is that our virtual public hearings are much better attended than any ones that we've done in person. So that's sort of what we've observed.
So we're never gonna do an in-person public hearing again.
Can I just call a recess for a minute? I just want to chat with Heather for a minute, if that's okay. Just call a recess, 5 minutes, we come back in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Just take sugar.
So let's move these two motions separately. The first motion is that the bylaw is read a second time. Can I have someone move that? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Rainbow. Any comments? Go ahead, Chris.
I think I'm not going to support this. There's a few things for me that are outstanding. I would like to, I understand it could be addressed, but also once you get into the public hearing and down the road, it's harder to adjust things. And for me, the helicopter piece is a concern. Emergency access is fine, but expanding heli operations at this day and age is uncomfortable. It's the wildlife pieces, climate pieces, a few things. And then I think having a better sense that Squamish Nation either, doesn't want to weigh in or, I think that's another important piece to me. I think Director Rainbow raised some valid concerns as well. So yeah, I wouldn't want to kill this at this point, but I'm not sure I'm quite at second reading it.
Okay. Anyone else with comments? No? Okay.
I'm assuming a lot of things that I raised will be dealt with between now and third reading, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna support this going forward, but I share the concerns of Director Pettingill around and Director Rainbow just having some outstanding issues, and it's not always the most comfortable for those. It's actually rarely the most comfortable for those to come forward at a public hearing, but given the cadence of our meetings and so on, I don't think that I think we can do that here, but so I'm supportive there, but so there's definitely some pieces outstanding before third reading, and we'll see what the public has to say as well. So I'm comfortable with that. I can live with that, but it's not my first choice.
Okay. Go ahead, Jack. Director Crompton.
Just add my voice to that. I will be voting in favor, but certainly looking forward to some of these issues being addressed moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I see no further comments, so I am going to call the question. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Director Pettingill is opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Now, the second motion is to schedule a public hearing. Whether it's virtual or in person, I don't think it's appropriate for us to debate the costs because we don't have the costs. We do have staff trying to understand what the costs of a hybrid versus in-person versus a virtual. And the merits of each of those three options are certainly important and should be considered. That is not the issue that we're dealing with today. This is whether or not we have a public hearing or not. And I think that we are inclined to have a public hearing. So if we can deal with the costs and merits of one of the three options, I think that's a discussion for a different time. But I think for the purposes of making this motion as it's set out, if you would like to make the motion that this is an in-person public hearing, or if you would like to support the motion as it's written in the package of being a virtual public hearing. I don't even know if it's written that way, actually.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
advertised in there.
Thank you. Yeah, so if that is the motion, you can make the motion of whether it's going to, is that?
I think, I guess, is this, the motion that's written now, is anyone supportive of
Okay,
that?
yeah, so we can put the motion that's in the package on the floor, and then you can,
And
Just. Oh, should I just have a question before that happens?
yeah.
Does staff look for, is the type of public hearing something like that specific that we want to see here versus like move to schedule a public hearing in appropriate time, place, format?
Yeah, like-
Because I think this will change. I'm just trying to think of this like outside of just this one ask, and like as we do this more broadly, maybe some places are it's more appropriate than others, or there's relatively easy technology for the hybrid or so does staff require that specific motion, or is this a delegate, or do we need to work on like delegation bylaw or something that would allow staff to choose the appropriate, whatever's appropriate for the situation?
I feel like we've always done it in the motion, and things changed when COVID made everything virtual, and then the motion had to reflect that it would be a virtual public hearing, and we never really went back. I think that there's a discussion for the governance committee or a committee discussion about how to decide that so that we don't have these debates every time. And not that we've had this debate many other times, but I feel like we talk about it a lot and we probably don't need to. Because we've now used 40 minutes of full agenda to discuss whether it's in person or not, so.
Can I ask a question, Angela?
Please.
Okay, would this be something that would be outlined in procedures bylaw on how we, or would it just be a regular policy on how we engage with the community? If we were going to look at options and then make a general.
Through the chair, we do have a public hearing policy, I believe, which Kim has been, is very well versed in. But we certainly can, like, there are many organizations that have their public hearing pieces embedded in a procedures bylaw as well. But we aren't as prescribed in our procedures bylaw. I believe we have a different policy related to public hearings, but I'll defer to Kim on.
Yeah, the public hearing policy is quite out of date because everything fell into flux during the pandemic.
It satisfies my question for now. We don't need to spend any more time there. I was just curious, and want to make sure how critical this piece was in our next piece of this.
Okay, so we don't have a motion on the floor.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
You're gonna move the staff recommendation.
I'll speak to it.
And do I have a seconder?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, speaking to the motion.
So during the break, I heard some discussion from Ms. Needham about the logic of going with an electronic public hearing on this. And I would tend to agree with what I heard. This is a somewhat remote location. There aren't any people living close to where this is proposed for. And I just don't think that this particular issue is going to generate the type of interest within Whistler to justify having this in person. And there could well be interested folks in Whistler who would want to know about this, participate in a public hearing. There could well be people in Black Tusk, Pinecrest, Squamish, and they would be better served, in my opinion, by an electronic public hearing for this.
Okay. Anyone else like to speak to it? Go ahead.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think if this was an area that was directly adjacent to a well-settled area, like I'm thinking back to other public hearings in Britannia Beach or something like this, where there's a facility, there's people living right next to the facility, and then you take the public hearing online, it feels like it's removing it from the community, where I think that providing the electronic format at this point is totally appropriate given the remote nature. And that area does get a lot of use from folks down into Britannia, or into Squamish for sure, and likely the southern portions of Area D from the interest in the Callahan ski, cross-country ski facility and so on. So I think that this, given that we don't have the hybrid option, that the defaulting to, or that the remote is totally supportable here.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Director Birch Jones for one final comment. We don't have any more time on this. Go ahead.
Just that I heard Director Rainbow saying a little while ago that there previously was a public hearing on this very same operation, and it was held in Whistler, and it was very well attended, and that he thought it was a very good forum. And so he was asking for the public hearing to be held in person. And so while I support the motion to schedule and advertise a public hearing, I'm not sure that I support it being held virtually.
Okay. The motion is on the floor. I think
And-
we've heard arguments for and against, and I'm gonna call the question. All in favor? Are there any opposed?
Yeah.
Viv, are you opposed?
Yeah, if I'm understanding, so we are hard baking electronic public hearing into this motion in spite of what Director Rainbow, oh, then I'll vote against it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else opposed? Okay. Motion carries. We're at 8.6, electoral area A zoning and OCP bylaw amendments for the Braylorn Adventure Zone, second reading.
Can we move the first two that's together?
Yep.
I'll make the motion to move the.
Sorry, does anyone have any questions for staff before we get to a motion on the floor, please? I don't see any on the screen. Nope, okay, now you can move the first two that's moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Hopful. Comments? Did you want to speak to it?
Yes, I do. Just wondering on the referral to private property owners.
Has it been?
Through the chair.
Yep.
Okay,
Oh,
so
we have Alex.
Yes.
Go
Thank
ahead.
you through the chair. So Alex Mackay, planner with the SLRD. Yeah, so the referrals process after first reading is a separate process to the neighbor notification process. That is part of what's done as part of the notification for the public hearing prior to, following second reading. Part of the notification for the public hearing is that neighbor notification letter, which will go out to every property within 150 meters of the affected parcel. And that's baked into our procedures bylaw, that 150-meter radius.
Okay, thank you. Just a comment, similar to Director Rainbow's comments on virtual public hearings. We have that very similar issue in the Bridgewater Valley. And we do need to come up with a policy on hybrid meetings. This is a good example where this could have been held hybrid in Braylord. And so we definitely have to look at hybrid and simplify them, so that the costs aren't as great as they should be. You know, there may be some funding to a community organization with all the equipment that's needed, so that it's not has to have to be transported to the various locations where they're held. And again, costs associated with it. Is it the people putting the application in that pay for the extra costs? Or is it the SLRD pays the extra costs? So I'll just leave it at that, but I'll make the motion to move.
Right now, we're only considering the second reading of the two bylaws. The next motion is about the public hearing and whether it's.
We haven't voted on it yet.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Well, we're, that's how I understood you moving the first two that.
Yeah.
So we're only doing that, and I'm calling the question, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion carries. And then the next one is a motion to schedule and advertise a public hearing to be held electronically.
Yeah, I
And
made
you
my,
made your comments.
yeah, so I'll move it.
You're moving it as it's written?
Yeah.
Okay, and seconded by Director Herford. Any further comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving along to 8.7. Hello. We do have staff here to answer questions regarding the security issuing bylaw 1868 for the village of Pemberton to be introduced and read for a second and third time. We can handle these in two separate motions. Would someone like to move, or does anyone have any questions for staff? We do have staff here for questions. I don't see any questions, so I'll ask a question, Director Birch Jones. Okay, I see your hand, but I don't see you trying to unmute. If you'd like to ask a question, ask it now, please.
I'm just understanding why Pemberton has to go through the SLRD for this.
All municipalities have to apply through the regional district for funding issues like this through MFA. Municipalities can't apply to MFA directly, which is why we each regional district holds a seat on an MFA board. Any other questions? No? Okay. Are you moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Mack? Comments? And this is again on first, second, and third reading. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And someone move that we adopt. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director French. Comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. CAO verbal update 9.1.
Thank you.
Over to you.
First of all, just a conversation about campfire bans with the recent campfire ban that went through all the municipalities in May, I believe it was. Some comments came up to the regional district about our own campfire ban, and specifically I bring this up because comments came from fire departments of local municipalities that asked for the regional district support in also having a fire ban. I want to clarify for this table that fire bans, the regional district technically right now does not have the ability or the power to have a fire ban on all campfires. And there are regional districts that do, and that have implemented bylaws giving themselves the ability for that. We currently don't have the bylaws in place. There are two schools of thought for fire bans. One of them it being provincially regulated because the majority of the land is public land for regional districts. And from the provincial every time that our director of protective services has spoken to the province is preferring people to learn how to backcountry recreate in a responsible way, better understanding how to make and put out fires. That can be discussed either way. And then the other school, the school of thought for having a ban is one, if you have the rule, how do you enforce it? Although the other side of that is if you have the rule, you might actually reduce the risk by 60% of people who want to follow the rules. I will say that in this time, should this summer more pressure be on the SLRD to implement their own campfire ban, we currently don't have the tools. My recommendation is if we think this is something we will be going forward with next year, the year after, that a motion be that staff come forward with a bylaw to empower us to be able to do that. Whether or not that's necessary, I think is up for debate. Perhaps an information report is first required. However, I wanted, because the question has come up multiple times at this table and from the community and from neighboring municipalities, I wanted to clarify that we are not ignoring the fire ban or any need to fire ban. We just don't have the tools to be able to implement our own.
Question?
If we enacted a bylaw, would that give provincial COs or RCMP or other enforcement bodies the ability to enforce that bylaw, or would it be up to us and our bylaw to actually?
Through the chair, I think an information report will be able to answer this better, but I can try to answer it saying that it depends on the agreement that we have with and their willingness to enforce bylaws that are SLRD bylaws.
Question?
Yeah, just curious, in the fire services review, we do have in our area and other areas, we have these fire societies. And if the area of responsibility is actually delegated to them through the fire services review, could we not have it, the bylaws? So for those particular areas, so let's say in the Bridgeford Valley, Braylord Fire could have their area and they could implement a campfire ban, Gun Lake and Goldbridge in the designated areas.
Yeah, through the chair, great question, and I think it probably would be better served with a more meaty information report. I can say though, my concern would be that individual associations without any purview from the SLRD making campfire bans, the SLRD now is responsible for enforcing as a bylaw, because there's an education and then there's enforcement, and enforcement lies here.
Yeah, I'm in favor of the information report.
Yeah, I'll make a motion and have an information report brought back by staff, and that's good too. You second it?
I'll just finish with questions before, if that's okay. John?
No question, I was gonna second.
Okay, Tony, question?
Comment. Actually, I'd written something out that I intended to send to you, and I guess I didn't send it. But I was at the AGM for the Fairy Creek Community Association. Some questions came up about fire bans, and the fire chief was presenting. So he answered those questions, and his feeling was that it causes problems for the electoral area when we don't have a fire ban and the municipality does. Several, one is you've got residents saying, how come, why is this happening and so on. You also get people coming out of the municipality to where they can light a fire because we don't have a ban. And his comment at the time was that the municipalities seem to have a date. It gets to a date, this is the date when we have fire bans. And the province wildfire service uses a different approach. It's not my words, it's his words, based in science. So his feeling was that it would be better if the whole regional district followed the province and had a fire ban at the same time, that the municipalities didn't operate independently. And I was going to bring a motion asking us early in 2025 to discuss this whole issue and try to establish a regional approach. That would mean discussing with the municipalities that we would follow the recommendations of BC Wildfire Service. I think it would make sense, and it'd be a lot cheaper than a lot quicker than going through the process of.
I hear you. I feel like the fire services review is a very intense process that we're gonna see next month. Wouldn't this conversation be the best position to come after? I know that they're not the same and it's not looking at that regional approach, but more well thought out. This opportunity for the fires.
Chair, I was ready to put
Sorry,
a motion,
go ahead, please.
on
Yeah.
the floor
Yeah.
that speaks to all this, so I'd like to make a motion that we have an information report back so we could have a fulsome conversation about this with the information in hand instead of debating it now.
Yeah, thank you.
So motion to bring back an information report, because I have lots of thoughts and questions and comments as well.
Moved, seconded, speak to the motion, and then I'll let you speak to it.
That's it, I just.
You said it, go ahead.
So I think that the information report we're asking for can be somewhat informed by Tony's comments and concerns.
Yeah.
And we can talk about all of that, plus more out of loop.
Great. Any other comments?
Because I'm 100% happy with that approach.
Great, thank you.
I'll support the motion. I'm conscious that we often make requests like this and we talk about fuel and so on. So in this case, I do think it's there's a public safety element to it, which leads me to support it, but initiatives like this and asking staff to come back to the information report is exactly what is on capacity. So I'll just have that comment out there, but I'll support this one with the public safety piece of it.
Okay.
Yeah, just likewise, I would say from my experience, we in Squamish rely on our fire department to assess what the risk is and to make good professional decisions about when bans are appropriate, but having a regional approach, I think makes some sense. I'm eager to see what the report says.
Great, thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Back to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to take this opportunity to publicly recommend Lillooet Nation for their being a finalist for the Real Estate Foundation of BC's 2024 Land Awards. This award, them being a finalist, it recognizes their work with Mount Meager landslide restoration and the project amid slowing sediment buildup to reduce the chances of flooding and create conditions suitable for vegetation and wildlife habitat. They, I believe, came in second in this. They did not win it, but they were a distinguished finalist, and as our partners and neighbors and doing good work that we all attempt to do, I wanted to recognize them for that publicly.
That's great. Thank you.
And the last one is a motion about travel expenses related to the Indigenous Relations training session. So just some housekeeping, we have some travel expenses, and we need a motion to cover all the director's expenses to attend Indigenous Relations training sessions. And I think we should also preemptively also cover that motion to also cover the July 18th. So the framework meeting happening in July.
Okay. Would someone like to make that motion? Moved by Director Mack, second by Director Rainbow. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Motion to receive the verbal update. Moved by Director Richmond, second by Director French. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Yes, we're not gonna finish this agenda today. We have
Yeah, some days are quick.
9.3.
9.3.
This might be.
You think?
Yeah.
Okay, Chair?
Yeah.
To declare conflict of interest,
Okay.
as BRVCA owns that property,
Okay.
and my daughter is an employee of the BRVCA, and my wife is a director on the board.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Colin? Go ahead.
So if we were to grant this where like the properties in the same class, would they be having to cover the permissive part of this?
Yes, I believe we would, but at this time, we're not going to be issuing that exemption. We're just recommending to look into avenues that we can issue these permissive exemptions for heritage properties.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could clarify, through the chair, it doesn't qualify, as I understand it, Mr. Hodgins, if you can clarify for the, as I understand it, that doesn't qualify at the moment for any sort of tax exemption. And the motion's here, correct?
That is correct. It does not currently qualify, so the recommendation is just to review from a planning perspective if it can be eligible and what work would need to be done for this property and others that are similar.
So it would have to come back by October, I would think.
No,
Right.
This says when work plan allows the time for
Right.
finance staff to look into this. We're
Right.
saying they can.
Right.
It's not gonna happen for this year's budget.
It's not gonna happen for this year's, but in order for it to happen at all, it would have to be before October, like that would have to be a permissive to get it into the work plan for next year. Is that my understanding?
That is correct.
Okay.
And still work plan allows, maybe it's not next year, but it's.
Right.
For sure.
Go ahead.
Just that there's a second that to develop a policy. And I just wanna clarify, being sensitive to the amount of work that is it safe to assume, in general, this is the second instance today, that these recommendations now are not the staff anticipating what the board is gonna ask for, but these are staff believe this is gonna cut down work overall, and that's a safe assumption. Okay.
Through the chair, I think probably it's good if the staff is asking to do more work, it's because you're exactly right. They believe this is needed and it's a passion project for them to get it done.
Yeah, through the chair, we don't really have a policy for it right now, so these kind of come through at any time. So I think we would like to have a formal application process for everyone to review, and where we can do it where it kind of aligns with the October deadline. So it will be helpful for staff.
And there's policies within other jurisdictions that you can copy and lean into and make work. If that makes sense. Okay, I will, do I move around second? No, I don't. Could someone move this, please? Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Richmond. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Let's put it together. The caveat of those motions.
When it allows. Might not be today. Probably not.
Unlikely to be today.
We're looking at it everything.
Okay. We still have Mr. Hodgins here to answer questions. If anyone has any regarding 9.4, our 2023 statements of financial information. Does anyone have any questions? No, pretty straightforward. Okay, the motion is that we approve this information and that the board chair and treasurer are authorized to sign the information report. Moved by Director Richmond, seconded by Director Mack. Comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. 3. Ready? Oh, yeah, I don't want to cut that short. So let's move. Tomorrow issue. We're gonna defer some of these things to tomorrow. Yep. Yeah, let's finish our day with a very condensed board round table because we only have 10 minutes left. Thank you.
I'd like to defer that to tomorrow, about a 3-minute.
I'll give you my minute.
Okay.
You can have mine too.
There you go.
Good.
Can't have
It's just
three.
great.
Hey, so,
Yeah.
This is good news for the fire loss group. Alpex Expedition Kayaks Adventures proudly confirmed their donation of $200,000 for the complete debris removal of 9 properties affected by the devastating wildfire in 2023. This contribution aims to address the critical need for asbestos removal, particularly for uninsured or underinsured property owners facing significant financial challenges in Gun Lake community. The wildfire that swept through Gun Lake in 2023 left a trail of destruction, consuming homes, cabins, and cherished memories built over generations. Been emotional for me. 52 years of own property there. Amidst the devastation, residents like John Stafford, who had called Gun Lake home for nearly 60 years, recount the rich history and family ties to the community. His cabin, originally occupied by his parents, Mag and Jack Stafford, served as a gathering place for friends and families for several decades. Despite losing everything in the tragic wildfire in August 2023, John Stafford finds solace in the memories created at Gun Lake and now resides contentedly in nearby Lillooet. Similarly, the Hendrickson family shares their story of generational love for their Gun Lake cabin, purchased in the spring of 1976 by Bud and Joan Hendrickson. For over 48 years, the cabin stood as a cherished retreat filled with memories of family gatherings, cherished moments, even as Bud battled Alzheimer's disease. Though the fire has altered their retirement plans, the Hendrickson family remains hopeful for the future and the continuation of their cherished traditions. The donation provided by Alpex and Kayaks Adventures will enable the removal of hazardous asbestos debris from 9 properties within Gun Lake community. Due to the presence of asbestos, specialized remove processes are required, making the cleanup efforts substantially more expensive. Additionally, many property owners are grappling with inherited properties or financial constraints, further complicating their ability to address the cleanup and rebuilding process. Gun Lake is unique with stories and memories that span generations, including my own, said Sasha McLean, chair of the McLean Group, which owns Alpex, Kayaks Adventures, and Blackcomb Helicopters. This community holds a special place for us, especially for Kayaks Adventures team members who are part of the Gun Lake close-knit community. By assisting with debris and asbestos removal, we look forward to alleviating some of the burdens faced by property owners and help them start rebuilding their homes and lives. As part of the Gun Lake community, Alpex and Kayaks Adventures understand the connections that make this place special. This donation is a testament to our commitment to supporting our neighbors in their time of need as they navigate the path to recovery and rebuilding. Awesome. Just awesome.
$200,000.
Thank you.
They are great community supporters, period.
Okay. Thank you. Director Hopeful, 1 minute.
1 minute, we put a notice on title on 10 properties in Lillooet. In my last decade in politics, we have never done that before. These 10 properties were a combination of residential and commercial properties. They had discrepancies and no permits, and they were classified as minor, major, and health and safety issues. The issues were longstanding over the past years, multiple notices, many staff hours were allocated to it, and no compliance at all. And what basically this does is we just close the file. the notice is there, should they sell the property? It protects the new buyer, it protects the district, it protects the taxpayer. And it was a difficult decision. It was a difficult meeting, let me tell you, because they were all there. And, but that was my meeting on Tuesday for the best of it, but yeah, so it was interesting. Like I said, never done it in 10 years and don't ever actually want to do it again, but you may do it.
Good. Squamish.
I'll go very quickly in, we do have a regional moment tomorrow.
Okay, so you don't get one.
No, no.
1 minute,
No,
different topic.
No,
Ah.
no.
You can't talk about the full
Director
story.
Mac,
On finance,
Director Rainbow.
We're gonna move the mailboxes.
Good job.
Yeah,
That's good. We've heard from the neighbors that that's important, so good job.
it is important.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen
Nice.
onto our property.
Onto your property.
Oh, I think that yours.
I don't live in
They're
Britain.
all gonna come to Tony's.
Yeah, you come to Tony's for them. No,
Community engagement.
It's amazing.
we're gonna we're gonna move some to SLRD property and
Ah,
our planning department is quite happy with that. Yep, it's gonna work.
great. Area B.
Were you calling on me, Chair Ford?
Hans, it's your 1 minute. You get 1 minute.
Oh, well, we have a fire burning up in the Tiffin Creek area and it's 151 hectares, but I think it was originally, they were saying it was 50 hectares, but I do believe they just have more accurate mapping. It was really good to see how quickly the BC Wildfire Service got on that. It was started at the side of the highway, just on the way to Squilix by a very important archaeological site, which I'll actually reference tomorrow. And that was all during the hockey game. So hooray for the firefighters. And I hope they get it under control. It's not under control. I'll stop there.
You. With that, we will recess this public meeting. We will close this meeting for the day. We'll reconvene tomorrow after the committee of the whole. Thank you. See you tomorrow.